when you look at this image, what you see looks like a whole bunch of white dots on a lot of black space, doesn't it? But it's actually much more than that. It's actually two photographs far away in space from Earth, and all of those white dots are celestial objects like stars and one planet. And it's this image that Clyde Tombaugh used on February 18th, 1930 to discover the planet Pluto. It's right there, at this arrow and this arrow. Now don't get the wrong idea. It's not like Clyde took these images with his Kodak camera and while sitting on his sofa sifting through them one day said, "Eureka, there's a planet right there." No, the process was much more complicated than that and much more time consuming than that, and it started way before February 18th, 1930. Since the latter part of the 19th century, astronomers had speculated that the orbit of Uranus, the seventh planet in our solar system, was being disturbed by some other object than the eighth planet, Neptune, that had been discovered in 1846. But was it really there, and if so, could it be discovered? One of the people interested in finding the answer to that question was Percival Lowell, a wealthy Bostonian who had founded the Lowell Observatory in Flagstaff, Arizona in 1894. So, in 1906, he began a project searching for what he called Planet X. Using the telescopes and other equipment at the observatory in concert with mathematical calculations made by Elizabeth Williams, a phenomenal human computer whose story deserves to be told in a separate video, Lowell and fellow astronomer William H. Pickering, who was working at the Harvard College Observatory, suggested several possible celestial coordinates for the planet's location over the course of the next few years, but none of them were able to be verified. Then, in 1916, Percival Lowell died, and the project was discontinued. Sadly, unknown to Lowell and his colleagues, they'd actually taken two faint images of the planet in 1915, but they just weren't recognized as such. Actually, between Lowell and other astronomers, there are 14 pre-discovery observations of Planet X that simply weren't recognized in time. So, what made the difference for Clyde Tombaugh? How did he make his discovery, and why did it take so long after Lowell's death for it to finally happen? Well, in terms of time frame, there are a couple of reasons. One, Lowell's death, of course, meant a loss of leadership on the project. And two, and more importantly, when Lowell died, his only surviving heir, his wife, Constance, sued in probate court to change the terms of his will, which included a $1 million bequest to Lowell Observatory for the continued exploration of Planet X. As a result, the widow and Lowell Observatory ended up in a 10-year battle in probate court before everything was finally decided. The observatory faced financial and organizational difficulties, and the project never got started again until that probate battle was over. So that leads us to the other part of that question. What made the difference for Clyde Tombaugh, and how did he make his discovery? Well, first, let's learn a little bit about Clyde Tombaugh. We'll start with what he wasn't. He wasn't an experienced astronomer. He hadn't been at Lowell Observatory for a long period of time. In fact, he didn't yet have a college education. That would come later. What he was a very bright young man who had developed an interest in astronomy at a very young age that had been supported by his Uncle Lee. Born in 1906 in Streator, Illinois, he had gone to high school in Kansas after his family moved there, but financial difficulties prevented him from going to college. They did not, however, stop his interest in astronomy. In 1924, he read an article in Popular Astronomy about the planet Jupiter and was fascinated by the drawings that he saw and decided that he wanted to see Jupiter for himself. So he built his own telescope. In fact, he built several telescopes with lenses and mirrors by himself. As a result of his observations, he made drawings of Jupiter and Mars and mailed them to Lowell Observatory. Impressed, they offered him a job, and he began working there in 1929, continued there until 1945. So 1929, he becomes an employee at Lowell Observatory, and by February of 1930, he's discovered Pluto. How did it happen? By doing what most would consider mind-numbingly repetitive work. Once he was at Lowell, V.M. Slipher, the head of the observatory, tasked Tombaugh to take systematic images of the night sky in pairs of photographs, then examine each pair to determine if any objects had shifted positions. Tombaugh started with Lowell's predictions for the planet's location based on Williams' calculations, but he was able to take much higher quality images because of a remarkable triplet lens that the observatory had been able to purchase for its 13-inch astrograph. He then viewed the images on a blink comparator machine that had been purchased by Lowell back in 1911. This specialized stereo microscope held the photographic plates side by side, and a mechanical shutter allowed him to alternately first see one image, then the other, while looking through a microscope eyepiece. So that's what he did. Looking at image after image, he rapidly moved them back and forth to create the illusion of movement of any object, to see if it changed appearance or position. And he did it for months, and after nearly a year, on February 18th, 1930, while looking at this photographic plate, he noted movement between a photograph taken on January 23rd and a photograph taken on January 29th. This object is here, but now this object is here. The observatory staff was certain of Tombaugh's discovery, but before they announced it to the public, they wanted to make sure they had more confirmatory photographs and hoped to calculate the planet's orbit. By early March, they had enough photographs. They hadn't yet calculated the orbit, but they felt they were ready to make the public announcement. The question was, when? Ultimately, that choice proved to be an easy one. March 13, 1930 would have been Percival Lowell's 75th birthday. So to honor him, and to coordinate with the March 13, 1781 announcement of William Herschel's discovery of Uranus, they picked March 13th. So on March 12th, V.M. Slipher sent a telegram to Harvard College Observatory with the news. From the telegram, officials there created Harvard College Observatory Announcement Card 108, which the very next day announced the discovery of a new planet. Planet X was now Planet 9, no name yet. That would come later, on May 1st, 1930. The name of Pluto was suggested by 11-year-old Venetia Burney from Oxford, England, who gave the name to her grandfather, who sent it on to Lowell Observatory. The observatory chose the name because, one, it continued the idea of naming planets after Roman gods, but also because its first two letters, PL, were the initials of Percival Lowell. And that's the history behind this image. Know more about Pluto's discovery or want to weigh in on the debate between is Pluto a planet or a dwarf planet? Let us know in the comments.